All right, today we're going to talk about the first building block of O-line success, is how to play in a football position. Like I said before, offensive line is not a natural position. It's a learned skill. So you have to understand what kind of position you can be in for success. And if you can play football in what I call an O-line position of power, you're going to really increase your chances of success. Now, to be in an offensive line position of power, a good football position, there are three key elements that you have to achieve, and you have to achieve all of them. Number one is power, number two is balance, and number three is leverage. So let's go into what each of those mean. The first one is power. Now, when it comes to power, you really need to understand where your power comes from as an offensive lineman. So offensive lineman, you can just understand that's going to come from your big muscles, right? So it's going to come from your glutes, your quads, your hamstring, your hips, basically. Your hips are your power as an offensive lineman, and extending those hips in a forceful action is where you get your power, right? Now, those things come in what I call your power core. Basically, from your knees to your armpits, all of this right here is where you generate all your power. But you want to have access to that power. In order to have access to that power, you need to have your feet on the ground, right? And that's why you see offensive linemen a lot of times take short, choppy steps or pass set with short steps, because every time your foot is off the ground, you don't have access to your power. You are in a position of weakness, not a position of power. So the first fundamental is that you have to access your power from your power core. That means you have to have your feet on the ground as much as possible. All right, the second element that you have to do is you have to have balance or stability. It's another word for stability. So in order to do that, you're going to go ahead and take a wide but functional stance, meaning you want to have your feet wide enough so that you can move in any direction, right? And the way you achieve this is you're going to roll your knees in so you're playing on your insoles, okay? We call this the duck demeanor. You want to have your insoles on the ground, because if your insoles are on the ground, you have access to all of your power, and you can move in any direction. You don't have to move. Think about it. When you go to move somewhere, you put your knee in, then push, right? I'm telling you, just start with your knees in and be in this position at all times. This allows you to have stability. It kind of forms a triangle, right? Triangle is one of the strongest, most stable structures man has ever invented. Look at this. The peak of your power core is right behind your belt buckle, right in your hips. That's here, down to the ground, just like a triangle, very stable and very powerful, okay? So first element is you have to access your power. Second element is you have to have stability and balance. The third element, the icing on the cake, is leverage, okay? And in this instance, I'm talking about horizontal leverage. A lot of people say that is get your pads below theirs. Kind of. More than that is you have to be striking your opponent with a rising blow. Now, in order to do that, you have to coil yourself and lower your power core. Now, the way to do that, as you take your stance, you roll your knees in, you're just going to bend your knees, right? It's not that hard. It's not easy, but it's pretty simple. Bend your knees and flex your ankles, and you're going to get down. So when I strike my opponent, I'm going to strike in a low to high manner, and I'm going to have leverage on them. I'm going to be able to get underneath their pads to drive and control them. Or in pass pro, I'm going to be able to get underneath them and stabilize them to protect my angle, okay? So these are the three key elements of playing in a football position. Now, why is this important? Obviously, because every time that you're not in a football position, you're not in a position to be effective as a blocker. So as you learn this, go and watch yourself on film and just pause the film randomly and say, am I in a football position? Are my feet on the ground? Do I have my knees bent? Right? Do I have a good wide stance? The more you get that, and the more you see players at higher levels, they're almost always in a football position. This is one of the key fundamentals to success as an offensive lineman, is playing in a football position. Now, I'll go on later on, and I'll explain the difference between being in a run position of power versus a pass position of power. There are some key elements, but you just need to understand the key elements of power, balance, and leverage, and playing in a football position as much as possible. And all the blocks that I will teach from here on out will all talk about being in a football position as much as possible.